when Ron Guy died in 2006. He was severely malnourished and dehydrated. A hero of the Second World War, Ron had served in an intelligence unit run by James Bond author Ian Fleming. But his time in the military took a toll on his mental health, and towards the end of his life, Ron was sectioned repeatedly by an NHS trust, now under investigation for alleged failings. The Lampard inquiry is looking into the deaths of in excess of 2,000 inpatients who died while under the care of NHS mental health units in Essex between 2000 and 2023. Since the inquiry began, it has heard shocking allegations of sexual abuse on wards, as well as patients at serious risk of suicide being able to take their own lives on units. Our reporter Charlie Frost spoke to Ron's daughter.
This is a portrait of my father that my mum did. Him in his commando uniform with his green beret.
Margot Binns couldn't be prouder of her father Ron, an athletic and sometimes rebellious kid. When he was just 15, he first tried to sign up. His dad quickly put a stop to it, but Ron couldn't be held back for long.
2 years later, as soon as my dad was 17, as soon as he was old enough, on his 17th birthday in fact, he went and joined the Royal Marines. And he was chosen to be in an intelligence unit that was, I suppose, the brainchild of Churchill and Ian Fleming, who wrote the Bond novels, became their sort of bureaucratic commander.
Ron had been recruited into Fleming's secret 30th Assault Unit, and come D-Day, his job was to penetrate German defences.
Their remit was to go behind enemy lines, be like ghosts on the battlefield, if you like, unseen, unheard, and gather intelligence.
These daring operations took him to Brittany, where he met his wife. Theirs became an unlikely but enduring love story.
She was in the French resistance, along with her mother and her sister. They were harbouring airmen who were shot down over France and getting them through the safe lines back to England. And that's where they met. They knew each other for 2 weeks.
But then they wrote to each other for years.
My mum kept them in this very box, in the top of her wardrobe, all her life.
Ron proposing and them planning their lives in pen and pencil.
Yeah, look, this one says, your loving husband.
Yeah, in inverted commas, because obviously they weren't married.
But he's obviously asked her by this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 1947, they were reunited and finally married, setting up home in Essex and going on to have 6 children, though Ron's experiences in the forces never left him, and Margot says he suffered bouts of depression for the majority of his life.
He would not get out of bed for about a week or two, and then he'd gradually emerge, and things would go back to normal. And this was my dad's pattern, I would say, for, well, ever since I knew him, until 1994, I think it was.
That's when Ron sought the help of a GP, who Margot says prescribed him antidepressants with no counselling or proper examination.
And what we noticed is he very quickly then went into this enormous high. So he went from being depressed to incredibly, it was something we'd never seen. So in 50 years, he then attempted suicide, which he had never done before. And this is when he first ended up in the care of the Essex mental health services.
Ron was sectioned and then released into the community without support, something that would happen repeatedly for the next 12 years.
They would put him on different antidepressants, they would put him on lithium. Nothing seemed to stop this cycle. And we would often contact them. They seemed to be completely uninterested until he reached rock bottom and he was suicidal. Then they would section him.
The cycle finally ended in 2006, when aged 80, Ron was sectioned one last time. His physical condition deteriorated so badly he had to be transferred to a general hospital.
They were aghast at the state he was in. He had bed sores, he was very badly dehydrated, he got sepsis, and he had basically starved and dehydrated himself to death.
Your father, a war hero, starved to death in an NHS hospital. How does that make you feel?
I feel as though my dad gave completely and utterly selflessly. He gave because he wanted to give to his country. He was never thinking of a reward at the end of it. And the one time he asked for help from the state, I think he was failed terribly.
Gosh, Charlie, incredibly moving story there from Margot, and of course what happened to Ron. What have those responsible for mental health services in Essex had to say in response?
Well, as you say, simply heartbreaking how Ron's life ended. And Margot told me she's in no doubt that her father wouldn't have died in the way that he did if he'd had received the mental health care that he deserved. She believes the people treating him never even tried to get to the bottom of why he had mental health problems. Well, in a statement, the chief executive of Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust, the trust responsible for the majority of mental health provision in the county, apologised. The chief executive saying he's sorry the care Ron received was not the standard it should have been, offering his deepest condolences to Margot and her family, adding that since Ron's death, a huge amount of work has taken place to transform mental health services, including the introduction of a specialist service to support veterans and their families. Now, Margot gave her evidence to the Lampard inquiry when it first began in September. But on Monday and 3 days after that, more families of those 2,000 vulnerable people that died in Essex mental health facilities will share their experiences with the chair, Baroness Lampard. And that will conclude this part of the inquiry before it gets underway again next year, when experts and the Trust will face questioning.